In Consumer Watch now, Americans throw away millions of pounds of food each year, leading to millions of pounds of waste. Some of the food that's thrown away is because it just doesn't look perfect. So many of the so-called ugly produce is not even sold in stores at all, so you never get a chance to see it. One company called Misfits Market is working to change the stigma around this ugly food. So joining me now is Abhi Ramesh, the founder and CEO of Misfits Market. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, thank you for having me.
So I think a lot of people don't even know this because, they peruse the food in the grocery store and determine what they don't like. But a lot of the ugly fruits and vegetables we never even see.
Absolutely.
The farmers can't sell them.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different reasons why we like to call it misfit produce doesn't actually make it to the store shelves. And so the most kind of obvious criteria is it's just too ugly to make it. And so we have a pepper here that is kind of misshapen, looks a little off. We'll have these kind of sweet potatoes that are maybe too small or too odd looking. And there's a lot of other kind of criteria as well. So for a lot of pieces of produce, there are size constraints. If the apple is a little bit too small, then a grocery store does not want to stock that on the shelf next to the gigantic, juicy Honeycrisp apples that you'll see.
Interesting.
And the final category, which I think a lot of people forget about, is excess produce and overabundance. So, some of the produce that we get, it just wasn't able to sell because there was an overabundance of a harvest, or someone had overshipped an amount from a different state and it's too expensive to sort of return it to that state, or the infrastructure unfortunately doesn't exist for them to go get it where they should get it. And so we'll get our hands on that produce and sell it to consumers at a substantial discount.
And because normally that stuff would just be dumped.
It would be dumped. It would be tossed in a landfill. It would be sitting in a storage unit for a while until it was about to go bad and then tossed in a landfill. So it's an unfortunate situation. The thing is with perishable foods, the transportation costs are so high. It's really difficult to move things around effectively. So if something's not at the right place at the right time, it gets thrown away.
And how much food waste are we talking about here?
So in the U.S. alone, it's about 35 million tons per year. Represents about $160 billion. Those numbers are so massive, it's tough to kind of fathom. So it ends up being a few pounds per person per day every year in the U.S. alone.
I remember growing up, you eat half of your food and your mom would say, oh, there's kids that are starving in other parts of the country, don't throw your food away. But it's actually more than just other people don't have food, so you should appreciate what you have. We're talking about all this waste is having an environmental impact.
Absolutely. And the way I think about it is it's our food production system globally, it's like an engine, a really, really big engine. And the fuel that feeds it is essentially our environment. Something like 70% of our water that is used is actually used for agriculture. A large chunk of our usable land across the earth is also used for agriculture. So we're feeding this gigantic engine, and ideally the engine is efficient. What comes on the other side is used perfectly. Unfortunately, there's a lot of different holes in it. There's waste that leaks as we're kind of building it, and then at the end, we don't use 40% of the output. And then there's other effects as well. So when food goes to landfill, it produces methane gas, which is arguably more impactful on the environment, negatively impactful than carbon dioxide. And so we just have this problem at a massive scale. And on the other side, we also just have people that don't have access to food. And so this wasted food could be repurposed and given to people who just don't have access to it today.
So at Misfits Market, you guys have developed a system where you're able to deliver some of this ugly food to people who want it. It's sort of a subscription thing. You get a box of food, every so often. But you must have to overcome the bias that we have about ugly food. We expect an orange to be perfectly round and brightly colored orange. How do you get over that?
You're right. There's a huge education component to it. And when someone sees a deformed pepper, for example, a lot of people think, hey, is that genetically modified? Is there something wrong with it? Everything we have on the table here is organic, so it's not allowed to be genetically modified. You can't use pesticides on it. So there is a level of education where we have to say, hey, this was not picked out for other reasons, for size, for shape, for aesthetics, or hey, it may look kind of normal, it's just an excess shipment. So we do a lot of things at Misfits Market through our social media, through our blog, to educate our customers and potential customers as to why a lot of this produce is misfit produce and why they're helping themselves, they're saving money if they shop here, and they're also helping the world.
Yeah, and they're probably getting some healthier stuff because you guys are pretty much locally sourced as often as you can. can be, right?
Yeah, there's a huge local component to it. In the winter, we also get stuff from elsewhere so that, you're able to have citrus here in the Northeast in the winter. The other thing is we found that our food generally ends up being fresher in many ways than the stuff you may get at a grocery store because, we don't have a store. It doesn't sit on shelves for days or weeks at a time. We get it from growers directly. We generally ship it out within a couple days, a few days, and then it reaches your doorstep. So a lot of the food you're getting from farm to table is fresher than what you'd be getting at a grocery store.
Ugly but good.
Thank you
very much, Abhi Ramesh.
Appreciate it.